G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. So the time has come for me to do my 2024 AFL season predictions. Oh boy, time to get abused once again. But in all seriousness, it's always an exciting time of the year, right on the eve of the start of the season. People more than ever eager to hear other people's opinions across the World Wide Web of where they think teams will place and how they think teams will go in 2024. And alongside the ladder prediction today, I'll also be going over the usual stuff of predictions such as your Brownlow Medal, Coleman Medal, Rising Star, all that good stuff. But predominantly this video will be the ladder prediction. And as per usual, this video will be pretty lengthy because I do like to go into detail on each team and why I place them in that specific position. So regarding the ladder predictions for the video today, I think it's always a top priority heading into a season that you've got to be bold with your calls and predictions. You've got to overrate and underrate a few teams, in my opinion, to be accurate because it always changes each year. There's always surprise packets. There's always teams that are on the down. And also with predictions, we always get romanticized that we hear pretty much every club will improve this year. We don't live in that fantasy world. There's got to be teams on the down. And yeah, you've got to be bold, I think, with a few calls. But alongside that, and contrary to that, there is probably around 16 teams, apart from North and West Coast, that I can definitely see make the 8. It's just who's going to really make that push. It will come down to injuries. Of course, it will come down to form. And I think collectively, as a whole community, we don't have a clue on how this season can pan out. That's why at the end of the day, for the most part, predictions are just always a fun thing to go over and see how close you are at the end of the season. Now, regarding last season's predictions, they were pretty poor. 2022 was pretty good, so I'm wanting to get back into some good predictions form heading into this season. So enough with the yapping in the intro. There is plenty of more yapping to be done in the video today. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you do go on to enjoy. And let's get into my ladder predictions for 2024. So we start off with the wooden spoon, and the last 2 years I've decided to be Mr. Unorthodox with my wooden spoon calls, with last year going with GWS and the year before that going with Hawthorn. Both of those teams in the end finished outside the bottom 4. So stuff it, I'm going with the safe option. 18th, the West Coast Eagles. Well, congratulations Eagles fans, you're not going to be finishing in the bottom 4. Surely this season I can actually get a wooden spoon prediction right, or just at least remotely close. But yeah, for me the Eagles will for sure probably be one of the worst teams again heading into this season. They had one of the worst seasons in club history almost last year. A really poor percentage, and for me I can't really see an off-season turnaround where they get out of the bottom 2 at all. So definitely one of the favourites to pick up the wooden spoon. They've got some good young talent, and that's the important thing I think heading into this season for West Coast, getting that development into those young players. It's going to be 𝐓𝐿𝐵𝐵's and 𝐼𝙗𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐻's second season, Noah Long as well. They have a few of those players that I'm keen to see how they'll go this year. And alongside that, it is critical importance that they do get those veterans out in the park, really nurturing those young players. You know, you look at 𝐼𝙗𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐻, really on and off the field with fitness issues, but when he's at his best, and from what I've heard pre-season, he's looking quite good. Jeremy McGovern needs to be out there consistently. He can be a match winner in their back half. Tim Kelly, career best year last year pretty much. Jamie Cripps as well through that forward line. So it's that real balance of, can they get good development from the young players this year, and can the veterans do their part to pick up a few more wins this year for the Eagles? I think that's definitely possible, but comparing to the rest of the teams in the competition, they still are in that rebuild phase, and for me, they are going to be the wooden spooners of 2024 for 2 years in a row. For 17th position now, we're kicking off the controversy quite nice and early in this video today. If you did watch my bold calls video last week, you might have an idea who I am placing here. I'm going with Richmond. This is a very, very harsh call. I personally feel right off the bat, but sometimes you just got to be harsh with predictions heading to this season. And for me, Richmond, there is a good and bad I can definitely see. You know, they have still some great talent across the park. If Tom Lynch is healthy, he can definitely be a chance for the Coleman if he can play almost all season, but that's not the case. He's going to be missing out on a few games at the start of the season. But Dusty Martin was in all-Australian form, really the back third of last year. Shea Bolton can return to all-Australian form. We know about Taranto and Hopper. Can they improve their output in their game in 2024? But for me, the two big things is their depth and their youth. I think youth, in terms of exposure and experience, is probably one of the worst in the competition. And if we're looking at it from a perspective of a full 24-week season, I don't know how well it's going to last in terms of results, consistency, and all that stuff. And you know, the first-year coach of 𝐼𝙗𝐿𝐼𝐻𝐻 can definitely give them a bit of a purple patch. We've seen that from a few other clubs. But yeah, I just really don't know about that youth. And Also, that depth, if they do get a few injuries in a few key areas, they could be under a bit of strife. They lost over 1,000 games of experience as well, so this is the absolute lowest I can probably see Richmond finish. It would have to require a few injuries and a few really disappointing results. They had shades of last year with some really bad games. They struggled with efficiency in their forward half. Midfield, they were very inconsistent. And for me, I think it'll be a year of them finding their feet. But don't get me wrong, I still think they'll show some great competitiveness. They'll be a thorn in some good team sides like they usually are. But if we're talking about a results business, I think that's where Richmond will struggle this year with just that depth and that youth. That does worry me a bit. So harsh prediction, I know, but it's a big one. The Tigers in 17th. And now for 16th, I do have North Melbourne. If you are wondering what the bold call was, it was, I think North Melbourne will finish above Richmond this year. So, yes, it's a bold call. I am definitely aware of that. It is a big one. But I'm optimistic on North this year to get out at least of the bottom two. And so are a lot of North Melbourne supporters. That midfield, I really love off the bat. It can definitely cause a bit of damage to some good sides. You've got Luke Davies-Uniacke, who can really take the next step this year. Wardlaw, I think, walks in this year and becomes their second best midfielder. 𝐓𝐴𝐸, the new draftee. I mean, Zane Duursma in their forward line too. Dylan Stevens recruited, can get some runs through the middle there, of course, as well. Tom Powell as well. I've been hearing good things. Will Phillips and Lazaro. There's some good signs of their youth I'm liking heading into this season. But there is still plenty of bad. I mean, look at their back line. Meagan Holly, Aidan Corr, Charlie Comben. It does make you a little bit worried. They won't have Griffin Logue until the second half of the year. So defensively, they will really need to try and stem the flow of not conceding big scores. Also a big factor, second year at the helm for Alistair Clarkson. If he can get a full, consistent season of actually coaching the squad, I think I see good improvement for the Kangas this year. And their back half of the season, the last 6 or so weeks, I have to give them credit for. I think usually when teams finish a season quite well, especially those bottom 10 teams, the next year they can produce a lot better consistency. They were really impressive from what the circumstances were. That sort of back third of the season last year, they ended off the season on a high, that great win over the Gold Coast Suns. So I think they translate that into some more results this year and show a bit more damage in that midfield. Nick Lark is a great chance to take home the Coleman as well. So yeah, they will of course struggle this year still. They will get battered throughout a few games, of course. That is inevitable, I think, with the Kangaroos. But for me, I can definitely see them push out of that bottom two. So I've got the Kangaroos in 17th. And to round out the bottom 4 in 15th, I'm going with Hawthorn. You probably see the Hawks heading to this year now. The injuries they've had probably almost in that rung of North Melbourne and West Coast of teams that can't make the 8. But you've got to still give them a little bit of a chance. Because, geez, they've got some talent. When looking at their midfield, they were top 4 midfield for clearances last year, and a few of those individuals can have a brilliant year this year. John Newcomb's going to be the nucleus of that midfield group. I think he takes the next step. They'll be without Will Day for the start of the year, but the best and fairest winner, I think, will definitely show an impact when he does return out on the park. Of course, Warple in there a bit as well. Amon's going to be playing a little bit of halfback. Josh Weddle, really talented player, will leave flourish as that winger halfback type. And if we're looking at their forward line on paper, the sky's the limit for this Hawks forward line this year. They could, out of the blue, potentially be a high-scoring side with just so much talent in there. The returning recruit of Gunston alongside Bruce will definitely cause some impact, you'd think. Also, the recruit of Jack Ginnivan could definitely be one of the recruits of the year. Can a player like Nick Watson, their draftee, their high draftee, come out and kick over 35 goals? Mabior Chol, the new recruit, will definitely be a good servant to the main man of Mitch Lewis. If he can stay fully fit this year, the sky is also the limit for him. He could definitely kick over 50 goals. So there's a lot to like about the Hawks when you look at their youth and look at their talent. But still, when you look at the bad, they're still pretty inexperienced. And that defence, especially in the key position areas, is a bit of a worry. Because of the issues, Sicily will probably have to play on one of the opposition's best forwards. So he won't be able to play that intercepting third tall role, which he's very good at. You know, Ethan Phillips, his first year in the system. Sam Frost is also a weeping boy for Hawks supporters. Denver Granger Brass is injured. CJ is injured. So there is also that blend of bad that makes you think, well, they could start off the season quite poor, but I do have a good feeling that they will improve as the season does wear on with the young side. They do have almost similar to what happened last year. Started the season off poor, but were able to get results as the season did go on. So for me, Hawthorn probably in that bottom 4 area. I could see them finish just outside, but the injuries do worry me a bit. I think they do have a bit of a sluggish start to the season. So because of that, I do have the Hawks in 15th. Another big call here in 14th position. I'm going with the Western Bulldogs. It's a harsh call, I must say. I mean, you look at the talent they have on that list and you look at their expectations. They should be a team pushing into those top 8, top 6 areas. But I just have my doubts about them in a few areas. I mean, the big one for me is 𝐓𝐴. I don't know if this is the guy to get the best out of this team heading into this year. He's under pressure, we all know, of course, as well. And as well as that, they just are such an inconsistent side. They've been like that for the past few seasons now. Their defensive transition is one of the worst in the competition. So defensively, they just leak goals. Last year as well, going inside 50, they had really poor cohesion. They were just bombing it in long, not really hitting up targets well. So those are areas where they could improve in the off-season. But with the weaknesses I've stated, I just have my doubts about them. Also, of course, as well, looking at the elite plays I have on that list, and also sort of those bottom 6 players having their best 22 each week, it's just the gap between their best and worst is quite a substantial one. So I just really don't know about this side. For me, that could be a team that pushes into the top 8 again and plays some awesome football, but with the weaknesses I've stated, 𝐓𝐴 as well, the gap between the best and the worst, they could finish around this range. And, there's a few teams that I do like that are on the rise, I feel, this year. And for the Bulldogs, with the doubts I have, I've got them finishing 14th. So it's a harsh call, I must say, but for me, they're going to be one of the most disappointing teams this year. And I think 𝐵𝐴 will also be sacked at the end of the season. And now, moving on to 13th place, I'm going with the Fremantle Dockers. I must say, right off the bat, their youth core I really do like. And I do want to put them a bit higher. I think they can be the 𝐓𝐴 to push into the finals this year. So I do want to say that. But I've got them 13th, so I've got to justify why I've got them here. Their forward line, on paper, is a bit of an issue. Losing 𝐼𝐴 is a massive loss for their production. So they're going to have to get big numbers from the likes of course, Sonny Walters and 𝗏𝐼𝐿𝐼. Really crucial plays, of course, to their setup. But there is a lot to like as well with a lot of those young core players. And if you do look in their forward line, well, Tom Emmett had some really good games in the back half of last year. He could be a surprise packer in that forward line. And the big one, of course, is JDOD. I mean, he's a guy I reckon can come out and kick over 55 goals this season. So watch out for him. He's going to be the face of that forward line. But just week in, week out last year, it was like an identity crisis of how they played. They either were looking quite sound, moving the ball out of the fence and hitting up targets nicely inside 50. But then the next week, they were poor and all over the shop defensively. And going inside 50, they were an absolute mess. And midfield-wise, they were getting battered up around the footy quite a bit too. So for me, there is a bit to like with that young core, and always a team under the radar that pushes up for me. It could be Fremantle, because they did make the finals in 2022. If they can get back to their strong defensive foundations and build that fortress again, 𝐴𝐴. And also, you look at the likes of 𝗏𝐼𝐿𝐼 resurge and show some of his flashes of his prime this year. I've been hearing good things about him. There is definitely a good side of Fremantle that I do like, but just have my doubts about them with their system, as well as their inability to produce consistency. So for me, the Dockers will probably be around that mid-table spot. They could spike up, back up into the finals again, but the Dockers for me, from what I've stated, I've got them 13th. Moving up the ladder now, in 12th spot, another big call, the Melbourne Football Club. Bold calls video last week. I did say I think the D's are either top 4 or they are out of the 8. And if they're out of the 8, they could just miss out in the finals, or they are one of the most disappointing teams in 2024 and finish around the bottom 6 almost. I think the D's, when you look at them on paper, they should be a team back in the top 4 and retaining their spot in the top 4. Defense and contest, always a successful thing in the home and away season. They were one of the best teams for defensive structure, and also they were just a brutal side in the contest. And the finals last year, so disappointing for them. They really should have made the grand final, won both of those finals games at least, with the expected score. So one of the main reasons for their potential downfall was just off the back of those straight sets exits, 2 years in a row now. It can really mentally hurt the squad. It was just such a poor way to go out. I must say, I almost hate to put the Demons here, because it just feels like I'm hopping on this bandwagon of having them miss out on the 8 because of all these culture issues they are having off the field. But let's be honest, culture is one of the most important things for success of a football club. Just thinking about this more and more now with the breaking news of Joel Smith over the last week or so now, and Clayton Oliver, what's he been up to and all that drama. I just have these doubts about the mental side of things for this Melbourne side. They've got talent. They sort of remind me of like the West Coast post 2006. I think 2008, they go on and finish bottom 4. So for me, it's a big call having the D's miss out on finals because, as I say again, the talent they have, defense and contest very good. The forward line, well, they will need to get that right if they do want to return and retain a spot in the finals. You know, Ken Van Rooyen really improved. Petty comes back from injury. He had some nice cameos from last year too. So I've got to get that forward structure right on the field. But it's just the off-the-field dramas and the mental side of things I think will really affect the D's this year. And also the last few years, they've progressively almost gotten a little bit worse in terms of results, home and away season-wise. So, yeah, for me, I think they just take that big drop. And there's always a team in the top 4 that misses finals the next year. And for me, it's the D's. And they'll be one of the most disappointing teams and be under heavy, heavy pressure at the season's end. And I have them at 12th. And now for 11th place, I'm going with the Essendon Bombers. They also finished 11th last year, and I think they'll be around this range again in 2024. And definitely be a chance to push up into the top 8 this season. I am definitely bullish on them. I'm excited to see what is on show for the Bombers this year. They recruited really well in the off-season, brought across, of course, 𝗍𝐶 𝐸𝐷𝐻𝐪 to add a bit of flair onto the wing. Jade Gresham is a great acquisition in my eyes because it just adds some much-needed competition to those small forward stocks alongside 𝐓𝐡𝐞 and 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐷𝐻𝐪 too. And of course, Ben McKay is the big one. You know, if Ridley's able to be consistent and stay out on the park and get his body right, Ben McKay can really lock down on the opposition's best forward and allow Ridley to really float free and dominate because he is a quality footballer. And yeah, you just look across the list, it just is gaining maturity now. So I think this is a side that does improve. Brad Scott as well, he gets the best out of these sort of lists as well. The Bombers still do lack those high amounts of A-grade players, but Brad Scott is able to get the best out of sort of these lists like he was able to do at North Melbourne. And if you do look at their young players, they've got plenty of those young, talented players that are yet to hit their peak and have untapped potential that could really take the next step this year. Ben Hobbs, Nick Martin along the half-back line, I think he can have a huge year. So also considering they were in the 8 after round 17 last year, for me, there's improvement for the Bombers this year. They are on the up, but at the same time, it's Essendon. They can disappoint and play 5 weeks in a row of terrible football. That could be on the cards, but I think the list is heading in the right spot. They improve in 2024, so they'll definitely be around the mark for pushing for finals, and I've got them in 11th. In 10th place now, I'm going with the Gold Coast Suns. Again, a team I think will definitely contend for finals in 2024. When you do look at the 9 to 12 teams each season, they're usually around a game or two short of actually being in the top 8. So they'll definitely be around the mark, Gold Coast. The big one for me is Damien Hardwick. I was bullish on the Suns last year with Stewie Dew off the back of a good 2022. But now with Damien Hardwick at the helm, this is a coach that can get the best and get just the highest amount of strength out of any player. That's what they're able to do at Richmond really well. And when looking at the Suns list, they just have a lot of those individuals like Connor Butterick, Ben Ainsworth, Malcolm Roses, also Nick Holman. They just have those types where I think they can really improve this year under a good system of what you think Damien Hardwick will implement into the side of just high pressure, great execution as well off the turnover. They've just got some quality role players across the park, and we all know about the talent, the elite talent they have on board. The midfield, when they're up and about, they also are, I think, around a top 4 clearance side. You know, Rowell in there, he can take the next step this year. Noah Anderson, I'm big on too. He continues to improve. Item as a top 10 player last year. And of course, 𝐼𝐶 𝐿𝐼 will hopefully get back to his best after an injury-riddled season last year. Sam Flanders as well can take the next step. Jared Witt's always reliable as the ruck option. Ben King, if he's fully fit out there and if he's consistent, can kick over 40 or 50 goals hopefully this year too. So look at the fixture. They have the easiest fixture in 2024. So for me, that will definitely help them push into that range of making the finals. But Yeah, for me, they just fall short. I've got the seat to believe it for Gold Coast if they are to make finals in my eyes, just because they've never made it before. But yeah, with the stuff I've stated, I like to have the Suns in a range where they will make finals, but I've got them just falling short. But they'll definitely be around the mark. They do have to improve defensively, though. That was their disappointing factor from last year and fading out in games. So, yeah, Damien Hardwick will definitely get the best out of this squad. Not only this year, but I think the years to come, they'll be a really quality side. I think Gold Coast and finally make the finals. Potentially this year, but I've got them in 10th. And now for the dreaded 9th place. No one likes to be in this position, of course, but someone's got to be here. I'm going with St Kilda. Now, there's always at least 2 teams that are in and out of the top 8 each year, so this is almost like a mandatory theoretical prediction, because I've got to put the Saints here, because the teams are in and out, of course. But yeah, the Saints, I said in my early season predictions a few months ago, I still see them around that 6 to 10 range. I don't know if they're going to take the next step and push into the top 4. So for me, since they're around that 6 to 10 range, they are every chance of missing finals. Because last year, I feel like they did overachieve a bit. I mean, they're in the 8 for every single round of the season, even though they had some awful performances last year. So, alongside myself, there are a lot of people that have the doubts on the Saints this year. But what you can't fault is they are pretty much the top defence. Callum Wilkie was very good for them, but just as a back 6, they tracked back so well. They defended really well as a team. Their wingers like Mason Wood tracked back really well, and they're also able to attack off the counter too. Some games last year they were really good in forward half pressure, but for the most part where they did struggle was their ability to put on a score, and that's an issue I have with the Saints heading into this year. I mean, if Max King's able to kick over 50 goals, that's good, but they'll need more from those smalls. They'll need more of a collective effort from that forward line, because I think they were one of the lowest teams for points for in like the top 14 last year. So if the Saints want to be a threat for the top 4, because I think defensively they're in check, they have to be more of a threat inside 50. I think also they were bottom 4 last year for scores per inside 50, so that meant every time it was going in there, they were just inefficient with their ball use in their forward half. And also their midfield will have to be a lot more consistent this year. They were really, really poor. A lot of heads did drop. I mean, if Jack Steele's looking pretty rejuvenated out there from what we've seen in pre-season, if he has a big year, I think the Saints do make the finals. So they just fall short for me. They're definitely going to be around the mark. I still see them around that 6 to 10 range, because I personally don't think they take the next step this year. But yeah, they really got to improve their scoring. The defence will continue to be one of their strengths, but I've got them just finishing out of the finals in 9th. And now we move on into the top 8. So, from what you've seen so far, I've got at least 2 new teams in the top 8 this year. There's usually, at least 2 to 3 new teams that are in the top 8 every year, and that is what I've implemented, of course, in these ladder predictions. 8th place. If you did watch my bowl calls video last week, you probably know what team this is. The Geelong Football Club will return to the top 8. Oh, dearie me. I just can't say no to this side. I just can't say no. It is a very risky prediction, because what I did state in my bold calls video last week is I think either Geelong make the finals or they are in the bottom 4. There's just no in between for me, and I think they get it right this year. The most important influence for them is they just have to have those over 30-year-olds and the core players just out on the park consistently, because injuries really derailed them last season. And when you look at their youth and you look at the lack of age and also exposure in a lot of those young players, they need those older players out there, and they need their core out there playing consistent football. I mean, it doesn't help with Guthrie going down, so it almost just really defeats the purpose of what I am saying here. But I still think when you look at other factors, as their forward half is just still so talented. They're one of the top teams in the competition last year for scores per inside 50, especially at home. They just move the ball in transition so well. They really such smart users like Grind Myers when going inside 50, and they are a high scoring team that has a great percentage from last year. So there is a lot to like in terms of improvement for the Cats, but it's a risky one because they just have to get those core players out on the park consistent. They can't afford all these injuries again, because then I think they could derail and have a pretty disappointing season. But yeah, Jeremy Cameron, Hawkins, Brian Myers, Ollie Henry off the back of 41 goals. They need to get their midfield right. I mean, it's just not a given just because it's Geelong. They do have to get that right. So Bruin really has to take a next step. Max Holmes was disappointing last year, so I'm expecting him to really ramp it up. And when you look at their key position play, Sam De Koning was disappointing last year. I think he gets back up there a bit. And Jack Henry is an underrated one. He's turning 25. I think he can also take the next step. So yeah, it's also Geelong. It's just Geelong. It's Chris Scott at the helm. They're a very successful side, and I'm just buying into it. I'm buying into the stock that they make finals this year. So it's very risky. Almost everything has to go right for them in terms of personnel, and just they can't afford these injuries again. But the forward half talent they boast, they have one of the easiest fixtures this year, which will definitely help them at home. I think they get the results, and they make the top 8. So very risky stuff, but I'm backing in Geelong. And I've got them 8th. Moving up the ladder, now in 7th place, and I'm going with Carlton. Now, this is a bit of an unusual prediction putting the Blues here, because it feels like every predictions video I've seen, all over the internet, everyone has the Blues in the top 4, and having them win the flag. And I've got nothing against Carlton, but can we just take a step back and just I feel like they're a little bit overrated heading into this year. Is it just me? Surely other people agree they're quite overhyped heading into this season, because I had them top 4 last year. I felt they were able to take the step, and they sort of were able to. They did make the prelim, so they ended up the season being a top 4 side, and they had a great run in finals. But this is a side that's never been able to show pure consistency, and haven't been able to remotely look close like a top 4 team the past 2 seasons now. Granted, this could be the year they do take that next leap, but you look at 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐪 and Walsh, for example. They could start off the year a bit disappointing. Those are important players that are in doubt. 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐪's going to be out for the first few weeks or so. Do I think that the Blues can make the leap into a top 4 side and potential flag contention? Yeah, I can see that. You look at the fan support, and off the back of a very promising finals campaign, the momentum can really lift them to have a great year. But I'm just still skeptical. Because it's Carlton. The big one for me is Carlton really need to bridge the gap between the best and worst football, because it wasn't good enough. If they continue to show that this year, I just don't see them being a top 4 side. So they've just got to play their best footy. That stoppage dominance in the middle. When you look at 𝐓𝐻𝐻𝐪 and Walsh and Kennedy, Hewitt, midfield depth very good. They were a very good defence, especially in the back half of the season. In finals, they were very strong against the Swans and the Demons and those wins. So that's why 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 out could hurt them the first few rounds of the season. And then also their forward line too. Can Motlop, they need more smalls to contribute into that forward line. So 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐪, Durden, especially Motlop, I'm big on this year. Can they also add to the firepower alongside Macca and Curnow too? So yeah, Carlton can definitely make the push. I just have my doubts in terms of consistency of their best and worst football. So I'm around 7th, because there are a few teams above them that I have more confidence in having a better season on the ladder. So yeah, I've got the Carlton Blues in 7th. And now in 6th place, I'm going with Port Adelaide. I've seen a lot of people having the power slip out of the 8 with a lot of ladder predictions heading into this year. I can't say no to Port though, especially with the recruits they've had in the off-season. You look at Port Adelaide last year, the brilliant run they had. That's going to be, of course, hard to replicate this year. It was a crazy run. But they made top 4 pretty much without a genuine ruckman. And they had a lot of issues in defence. They were one of the worst teams in keeping out scores on the balls going in their defensive 50. 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐪 was under heavy duress. Tom Jonas was pretty much getting dropped and getting suspended. So 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐾𝐬, I think, can be a really, really good player in terms of a 1-2 punch alongside 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐾𝐬. Both great intercepting plays. They could build a really strong duo. Zerk Thatcher as well as that sort of third tall type. He was good as a third tall at Essendon. So I think he can also make an impact. And then Miles Bergman, A really good quality small defender I think can take the next step. Dan Houston, quality footballer. Kane Farrell, they're good coming out of their back half. Rosie, I think he's going to be a star again this year. I mean, the captain, the number one 𝐼𝐴𝐵, 2 years in a row now of all Australians. He's just an absolute professional, and Butters along his side. It's just such a great midfield duo. Horn Francis as well. Ollie Wines, I've been hearing great things about him. Can he really contribute to that midfield a lot better this year? The ruckman as well, Sidor, he's going to be really good. Just the new opportunity for him, the new environment, I think he really thrives. And that forward half as well, they do need to get the structure right, but 𝐷𝐼𝐴𝐻𝐪 returning from injury, Charlie Dixon, Finlayson as well, Todd Marshall, they just have talent there. Willie Rioli as well, he had some great games last year. So yeah, there's a lot to like personnel-wise for Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide were one of the best teams in terms of forward half use, meaning they were able to keep it in their forward half, the best out of any team last year. Very good side in terms of off the turnover and front half turnovers as well. One of the best teams in the competition last year, also for score launches, so they're able to generate a lot of scores off hit-outs to advantage, and also intercept marking and off clearance. So yeah, for me, Port Adelaide, there's just so much to like. They will be in that position that will push for the 4. But they might be, end up probably being a game out. It's just such a logjam between 1 and probably 6 or even 7 position, because, yeah, there's just so many teams that are worthy of a top 4 spot, but they'll be around the mark again for top 4 again, Port Adelaide. So I like what I am seeing for Port Adelaide in 2024. I have them 6th. And now in 5th place, I'm going with the Sydney Swans. 2023 was just such a roller coaster season for them. I mean, just with the personnel issues they had, and off the back of that grand final, they were bound to struggle. They weren't at their physical and mental sharpest. They just finished games off so poorly last year. Their fitness was terrible. They looked like a bottom 4 midfield with all the personnel issues they're having. Paddy McCartan retiring, Tom McCartan in the other side, Callum Mills was out for a bit, Parker Warner was out also for a bit as well. It was a bad sight to see, and how they're able to still make finals just shows the talent of this team. And ever since that Elam final loss against the Blues, as a Swan supporter, I said to myself, I just can't see the Swans not improve heading into 2024. And look at the off-season they've had. At this point, last year, they had probably around 25 fit players. Now they have 40. So with a lot less players under the injury cloud, I just think they're going to be a much more physical and mentally rejuvenated squad, which should really help them this year improve the fitness and also ability to finish off games a lot better, because there were a lot of losses last year where the Swans really should have won, but they just ended those games so badly. So more 4-quarter consistency is a necessity for the Swans this year. And the recruits they've had, much needed experience added in. Taylor Adams, I mean, he was disappointed, of course, not being part of that Collingwood side, but he obviously knows personally he's still at his peak to play some impactful footy, so he comes across to the Swans, and it will be really important as that inside midfielder, able to get that first possession sort of type of mid. And then, Brodie Grundy, I mean, it could be one of the recruits of the season. The Swans haven't had a good quality ruckman in a long time, and a player like Grundy who's able to play as that extra midfielder. I mean, look at the practice game last week, just as follow-up work. It's going to be really important for the Swans, because when you look at Sydney's ball movement, especially end-to-end, it's some of the best in the competition. They pretty much made the finals last year, where everyone written them off, including myself, off the back of that really good ball movement and the cohesion going inside 50. A high-scoring side as well with the plays they do have. So for me, if the Swans are able to improve the fitness, which they've been able to show from what we've seen in the preseason so far, finish off games well with the recruits they have and just the young talent they have, another year, it's just going to be really promising to see, the Chad, Errol Goulden, Rowbottom, of course. Just all the good things mixed for the Swans to improve this year. And for me, they're going to be right in the thick of it for a top 4 spot. But I have them just missing out in 5th place. So I could go on for ages about my Swannies since it is the team I support. But I just see them improving this year with the off-season changes. And they're just a lot more of a physically and mentally rejuvenated squad after just such a roller coaster season of personnel issues. So have the Swannies in 5th. And now for the top 4. Every single year there is at least one team outside the top 8 that goes on to make the top 4 the following year. 4th place, I think that team will be the Adelaide Crows. as I said at the start of the video, sometimes you've got to overrate and underrate some teams, and I think I am overrating the Crows a little bit here, because when you look at some of the weaknesses, the back line, will it be able to hold up? The onus is on the older players like Brodie Smith to really lead the lines, because of course they won't be getting Nick Murray back until the second half of the year, coming off the back of that ACL injury. They did lose Tom Doedee, so it's a really young and pretty much inexperienced back line when you look at it. You know, Ball Ace and Worrell and Jordan Butts, and of course Michaelani only his second year, and Dan Curtin's first season, so that's probably an issue. I do look at Adelaide, but why I do have them in the top four is just look at some of the talent they have. The highest scoring side last year says it all, really. I think they'll build off that, being one of the most efficient forward lines last year, best team of the competition for scoring shots per inside 50, and that will be, again, an absolute scoring prowess in 2024, and that will be key for them making the top four in 2024. Made the bold call last week as well that I think the Crows can also go undefeated at home. They were brilliant at the Adelaide Oval last year, so I think they just build off that. You know, the midfield was a little bit inconsistent last year, but when you have the likes of 𝐼𝐿𝐴 another season, Rankin was brilliant last year. These are the sort of players adding into the midfield mix. It just adds that dynamic edge into their midfield alongside Laird, who's really important with how they go. Jordan Dawson, his first full pre-season as a midfielder, that will definitely help him too. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 had some good games in the back half of last year. Will he be a part of that midfield mix? So yeah, for me, it's just the exciting forward line they do possess, the X-factor plays they've got. Yeah, I'm big on the Crows this year. I mean, as well, when you look at it off the field wise, Darren Burgess, he's definitely huge, I think, on how the Crows have been able to turn into such just a high pressure side, finals quality, like especially at home. You know, just the that strong foundation of accountability and pressure and intensity around the football gives me great belief that the Crows can push into the top four in 2024. In third place now, I've got the GWS Giants. I can't see them really below sixth place, to be honest. This is one of those, what's that quote from The Simpsons? My lock of the week, or it should say lock of the year. Because, yeah, I'm big on the Giants again for 2024. Watch their highlights from the finals series last year, and it just gives you that good belief that they'll be able to come out and be a top four side, because with how they play, it stacks up to the best, or if not the best. One of the best rebound sides in the competition. They just rebound it from their defensive 50 so well. The chemistry and cohesion with the squad from what we witnessed last year is brilliant. They're a tight-knit group. And off the back of that 1 point prelim final loss, usually when teams lose those close finals after just a really, really strong season and strong performances, teams can come out the next year and just absolutely own it. And for me, GWS can definitely do that. Their back six, they defend so well as a defensive unit. Jack Buckley, extremely underrated as the number 2 to Sam Taylor, which we all know a top defender. Connor O'Doon is just brilliant as a small defender. I think he also is very important to how they go. You know, Harry Perryman back there as well, very underrated, could also float into the wing. I think Finn Callaghan can take the next step this year. Tom Green as well in that midfield is just a beast, one of the best ball-winning midfielders in the competition. Will also take the next step. Canelio, Callum Ward, their veterans, also Hogan. They got so much out of their forward line last year with Riccardi and Hogan having breakout seasons. And of course, Toby Green down there as well. Bedford applies the pressure. Daniel's so clean. They just have that perfect balance of elite players and also role players that just contribute so much to the side. And just with how they play, it stacks up to the best. They play fast football. They move the footy really well. The Orange Tsunami was back last year. They're a top 4 side in 2024, in my opinion. And I've got them in third place. So that now leaves the top 2, which were the 2 grand finalists from last year. I can really either see Collingwood or Brisbane be the minor premiers, but I'm going to be going with Collingwood in second place. Yeah, not really much has to be said. I think the Pies will be around the mark again. A really good chance to go back to back. They just have that terrific mental edge that they are always in games. So they might not be statistically the best team out there, but they're just always in games with that strong mental toughness they do possess. You know, Craig McRae, he's worked wonders. They're a very tight-knit group, well-balanced side. For sure, I do see some teams start to strategize against the Pies. You know, from what we were able to see last year, if you're able to not allow the likes of Darcy Moore to intercept, and if you're able to get goals out the back and get the Pies you know, really well efficiently off the turnover, you are able to put on a bit of a score against them. But, you know, they're still going to be one of the top teams in 2024. Can't see them out of the top 2, and for sure a great chance to go back-to-back. And that does leave the minor premiers. I'm going with the Brisbane Lions. When you just lose those close grand finals, and especially with how they went in that grand final and the season they had, undefeated at home, I just can't see them drop off. They're going to be, again, a team that can definitely win the flag in 2024, and they're going to be my premiers for this season. It's a very vanilla selection, but the list is in their prime. I think they can, get their revenge. And could it be a rematch against the Pies in the grand final this year? It definitely could be. But yeah, they're going to be my premiers, and also in first place. They'll continue to be most likely undefeated at home this year. As I say, the list is in their prime. Defensively, they really improved last year, so they continue to improve that. Such a well-oiled machine, especially at home, with how they move the footy. They get goals at the back. Very strong clearance side, and just a quality football club. So they're going to be my premiers, and also my minor premiers for 2024. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is my ladder predictions for 2024. As you can see, the video length very long, but, you know, talking about each team for around 2 to 3 minutes, I feel like is worth doing with these sort of videos. I always like to chew the fat and talk in detail about my thoughts on how I think the season could unfold. So now we'll move on to a few awards that we always like to go over. We'll go over the Brownlow Medal, the Coleman, and of course the Rising Star Award. And as I always say, each and every year, picking the Brownlow Medal is basically just picking an elite midfielder, and you're halfway there. I was pretty fortunate last year picking 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿, so can I go 2 from 2 this year? This year I'm going Nick Daicos. Very, very vanilla once again, but this guy is an absolute star. He really would have won the Brownlow Medal last year if he was not injured. And I just can't get enough of this guy. He's a generational talent. His awareness at his age is remarkable. He just sees the game so well. He's not a pure inside ball-winning midfielder, but just his awareness and his ability to read the game once he gets it, and just how he sets up, when he's in the midfield is remarkable. And his foot skills is brilliant. His quick thinking and his decision-making, it's all there. He's a goal kicker, and yeah, he'll just continue to improve his conditioning and his endurance and his physicality as the years go on, and he'll be up there again this season. So I'm going with Daicos. It's vanilla, but I just truly believe he's going to win the Brownlow. Simples. So Daicos for Charlie. And now for who I think will take home the Coleman Medal. I think Curnow has a very good chance to go back to back to back, but I am big on 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿 to take the medal home, and so as many others. Last year, he booted home 71 goals in a 17th place North Melbourne side. And obviously, if you've seen from my ladder predictions, I am big on North to improve this year. So I think his output also does as well. He might get a bit more help from a few more forwards if they are going to be a better side in terms of scoring output this year, the Kangaroos. But yeah, he's still the face of that forward line, 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿. Very good on the lead, and he's one of the best set shots in the comp. He's just such a composed kick for goal. Always kicking bags left, right and centre. He's good against strong opposition as well. So with that said, I think 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿 will take home the Coleman Medal. And now for my rising star. 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿𝐿. 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿𝐿, yes. Okay, I'm joking. I'm going with George Wardlaw because this guy, I think, as I said in the North segment, comes in and will be pretty much, I think, the second best midfielder for the Kangaroos and will just own it this year. But look, 𝐓𝐿𝐿𝐿, top 3 𝐬𝐿𝐴𝐿. You heard it here first. I'm big on him. But yeah, Wardlaw for me, just said it right then. He'll come in and have a brilliant season. North have done really well on bringing this guy in and taking time on him because he was injured obviously in his draft year, and they wanted the slow and steady, introduction into the system. And I think he debuted round 10 last year, and he had a few injury problems last year, and he is a little bit injury prone. So if he plays 16, 17, 18 games, not the whole season, probably kiss his chances goodbye. So he needs a consistent year. But no, his attack on the footy is brilliant. His intensity is great. He'll improve his numbers this year. And I've got him for the rising star. Second, 𝐼𝐴𝐴𝐿𝐿𝐿. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is my season predictions for the 2024 AFL season. I am bloody keen for the season to kick off. Starts next week. Swannies versus the D's, of course, going to be streaming it live. Going to be, of course, doing a lot of live streams, a lot of live watch-alongs, a lot of live commentary. So stay tuned on the channel for that. But yeah, of course, feel free to let me know what you think of my predictions. Don't worry, there's going to be plenty of that. Try and keep it civil in the comments. You know, we all have our opinions, but I do respect every club. You know, don't have any of this bullshit death riding or hate boner for teams. This is just what I think. I've made bold calls and I'm going to stick by them. And if I get them horribly wrong, which I probably most likely am, it is what it is. It's all part of the fun, of course, on the channel. And of course, always love giving my opinion and just talking footy on the channel. It's what I love doing. So hopefully you did go on to enjoy, everyone. It's a long-ass video, but that's how we do it. Always love talking about the footy. And yeah, until next time, I will talk to you later. See you later, fellas.